The label has so many different reasons as to why I started it and then again restarted it. And yes, like one of the parts is like creating kind of like a comfortable, safe space for female artists to release music. Like I definitely want to do that. I'm also releasing like non-female artists or like male artists, non-binary. It's like mostly it's about just providing kind of like a safe space and and like a tight knit community of people who are just like sweet and good people. And that was like one part of that. The other part of it is um, just a bit of again skepticism regarding the current state of the music industry and feeling like there's not a lot of great places to release music these days. And recognizing that perhaps I could probably do it better than some of these other places. Like I think like one of my biggest realizations in the last few months is that like what used to be like these big gatekeepers within the music industry, like major labels and stuff like that was the only way to get radio play. That was the only way to break out in any sort of sense. That kind of culture doesn't really exist anymore, and there's so many indie labels. And when you look like break it down, it just feels like at some time, like at some points, you're like giving your art away to someone who maybe isn't going to give that song the best shot. So I felt like this kind of like, well, if I do it, then it's mine. And then also I feel like I've got, I was like basically brought up through the Dirty Bird world where they took a very strong independent approach to dance music, and watching them and how they operated, I was like, oh, I could do this myself as well. And I probably would be like better off because I could really put my resources and knowledge to it, and I could get better results this way, So that it was like a twofold thing. Like creating a safe space for female artists is like a huge thing for me for sure. And creating a safe space for myself is kind of the second part of that. And that's kind of like where those two things tied in. And again, like I think a lot of what I do these days is based on skepticism.
What are some was just picking off of that, what were some of the harder lessons that you've learned, like lessons that you've heard that you've learned the hardest, the hard way, like in the industry, you specifically for being as being like a female artist, like stuff that you encountered like over the years and all that, like has there been like things that kind of like piled up that made you want to do your own thing, or like what was some kind of lesson that you've learned over the years?
Okay, so like one of the big lessons I've learned, and I think this is important for every artist, is that at the end of the day, you are your own CEO of your own art project. And I think one of the main lessons I've learned in the last year or so is that, um, like, I think there's a lot of, how do I word this in the correct way so I'm not offending people? um, you're always going to be in charge of your own project as an artist, and you have to be very selective about the people that you decide to work with in order to further your own career and project and get exposure. And I think one of the main things I learned is that people are incredible salesmen, but there's not a lot of people that are really great at the follow through. So what I've done in the last few months is like really shifted that, and I stopped looking for these big name brands that were looking to promote my project, and shifting towards people that are just great hustlers, great workers, whether or not they have like all the industry connections in the world, it does not matter. I think at this point, we see that like you don't really need someone with a ton of connections, because at the end of the day, it takes one song on TikTok to go viral and your career's made. So it's like, I think it's like a shift to more like independent, indie, smaller teams that would be like the most beneficial for anyone, and just making sure that you're working with people that are actually getting things done is like a very important thing. And the only way to do that is to stay on top of everyone and be the CEO of your own company kind of vibe, which I think that like for artists, I feel like maybe it's kind of hard to adjust to viewing themselves as business owners. I think a lot of artists feel like maybe apprehensive or scared to approach the industry in that way. But if you don't, you'll just get like bulldozed and people will take advantage of you. And a lot of people in this industry are self-serving, and use artists as a means to gain self-worth. So it's just like you have to be in charge of that, in control of that, and constantly aware. So I think that's kind of just like my biggest lesson to artists is to just make sure that like the people that are working for you are actually working for you.